Hey, what is up? So today I wanted to answer a really quick question that I get a lot and that I think we have to think about a lot when we're launching new Facebook ad campaigns, which is which one should you be using? Should you be using interest targeting or lookalikes? If you're just getting started or you're trying to keep up with all the things that are happening in Facebook ads, knowing which one of these to use and when is a really valuable skill and knowledge to have. So let's talk about that in this video right now. So from the super basics, interest targeting. So targeting specific interests when you're typing into the detailed targeting audience on Facebook. That is one way that you can target people online. The other one is lookalike audiences, where you give Facebook a core set of data and you say, Facebook, go find me more people like this. Both of these have had different times where they've worked really well, and both of these do still have their place where they both work really well. I think the question is knowing exactly when to use them and where you should be getting started with what you're doing. So for us, what we're seeing right now, interest audiences have been working better this year in, what is it right now, October 2021 than they were before, because lookalikes were really, really powerful, but we've definitely seen a little bit of a drop down after iOS 14. Not that there is not a place for lookalike audiences, but what we've definitely seen is some of our interest targeting is working better. And if you're just getting started with a new campaign and you don't have any data, you're pretty much going to have to start with interest targeting. So something really important that we have seen that there's been a big shift over the years from what we've been doing online is how we use interest targeting. We used to do what was known as like single interest targeting ad groups, where we would take all of the interest targeting that we wanted to test, we would put each one of them in an ad set, we would start running ads, we would test which ones were working best, and then once we found the winners, maybe we would put all of those into one big ad set, we would start running those, or we just keep them broken out depending on the campaign and the objective and all the stuff we were trying to do. But what we have definitely seen over time, and a really big part of this is recently Facebook has required everybody to have the expanded interest box checked. So now Facebook is kind of using your targeting as like a guide on where they're going to start, but they're basically saying like, we're going to expand this if we think it's going to increase conversions. Targeting single interest ad groups just doesn't really make sense anymore, because you're not, the original goal was, hey, let's figure out which one of these converts best and let's target only those people. But now at this point, you can't really do that because Facebook's going to expand your audience anyways. So what we are doing for interest targeting now is we're doing basically like stacked audiences. So we will take small groups of similar related interests. We will put all of those into one ad set and we will test that out to see if that group, like targeting group, will work better and will give us the KPIs that we're looking for. So that is one way that we're using interest targeting. The other way that you can use interest targeting is you can use it with the layered audience option. So like you can have one group of interest and then you can say narrow audience, and then you can have another group of interest. And then what you can do is you can say, hey, I want to match people who are, I want to target people who like these interests and these other interests. That is another really good way that you can use interest targeting right now. We're definitely seeing that like bigger audiences are working better. So if you're doing that, make sure that you have some related interest on one targeting or some related interest on the other targeting. Both of those are large so that there's enough overlap so that Facebook can go out and do its thing. But definitely we've been running some tests recently where we're just taking a bunch of related audiences, throwing them all into the Facebook Ads Manager and like to an ad set, and then just letting it run, and Facebook's doing a really good job with that. Now, if you've been following some other updates at Facebook, they took away the audience insights for research. So the way that we often find these insights is we start by just going with core audiences that we know are working. And then what we will do is probably go and look at the suggested tools. So we can look at, hey, what are the interests that Facebook is showing us right now? For like the suggested interest. And then the other thing that we will do is we will go and use a third-party tool called Interest Explorer, and we'll go on there, and that pulls all the interest that Facebook has through an API, and then we can really search and find stuff. So this is the best way for us to create big lists of interests that we're looking for, and then we'll start grouping and clustering them together based on what we see is related and kind of has the right sizes that we're looking for. We don't want anything super small, like something that has like a couple thousand people in that interest. We don't want anything super big, like a 50 million person audience. We might test that separately, but these kind of middle range interests, we'll just take ones that are clustered and related, and we'll add that into one ad set, and we will run that as our targeting. So those are really the two ways that we're using interest targeting right now that we're seeing work really well at the agency. Is we have these kind of stacked audiences where we are grouping together audiences that are similarly related and kind of a medium audience size to get an audience of a few million people. We're running those. We're also sometimes using this narrow audience feature where we are giving two kind of criteria, and those will be two groups of people where we're looking, say, Facebook, hey, people who are matched this and this. We're also testing those. We kind of find that depending on the way that we set it up, is depending on, like, some work, some don't. The stacked interests kind of are a pretty more consistent thing, I think is the easier way to put it. And then we have the lookalike audiences. And so what we're seeing work well for lookalike audiences is more like email-based audiences. So ever since iOS 14, we've had some issues with pixels and how Facebook is having some difficulty tracking. We saw a big drop in performance. Things are starting to work better as of right now, the time of this recording, but there's still some issues with lookalikes. So what we have seen not work well with lookalikes is lookalikes that are built off of kind of like light engagement. So let's say like Facebook page engagers, Instagram engagers, people who have watched 3 or 10 seconds of a video. These types of audiences that are not really showing a lot of intent with our company is really not working super well when we go create lookalike audiences based off of those people. Now, what is working really well is lookalike audiences based off of customer lists. So people who become leads and people who become customers. Those are both working really well. We are not using, we'll test out like the value based ones where you can upload customers with a value attached to those. But the two that are working really well for us right now is basically just leads and sales. And we're just loading all of that up into Facebook. And depending on what tools you use, you can actually just automate that process. So if you have ActiveCampaign or if you are using Hyros as a tracking tool, which are two tools that we recommend and use all the time, both of those you can just set up an automation so that anytime someone becomes a lead or becomes a customer, it just automatically adds them to that audience. And then that audience is just constantly refreshing, or you can always do that manually. We do that with some of our clients, and there's a lot of other CRMs that have automation tools that you can do that with as well. So that's what's working for us. That's what we're seeing. Basically, interest versus lookalike. I would always suggest testing both because you can find good audiences for both. We're definitely seeing interest working well right now, but we are doing like stacked interest. So we're no longer doing the single interest targeting. Now that Facebook is requiring us to have this expanded detailed interest targeting checkbox on, we can't really test single interest on them by themselves anymore because Facebook's just going to expand past what we set up. So now we're doing these stacked audiences. Those are working well. And then for lookalikes, customers, leads, really high intent based audiences. So maybe if you do a lot of video content and you've got people consuming like multiple minutes of your content on the platform, I would definitely test those. But some of the light stuff, like people who engage with Facebook page or people who engage with our Instagram page, we're seeing that those are not very high intent audiences, and they typically don't create great lookalike audiences either. So that's my breakdown. Always test both. It's a really good idea. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.